I will say I made a whole video last year called Books I'm Embarrassed I Haven't Read Yet because they've been sitting on my shelf for so long. And in that video, I was like, oh, like I'm going to read these books. Like these books are a priority. That was probably a year ago and I don't think I've read any of them. Hey, what's up you guys? It's Avery and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing the mid-year book tag because it is the middle of the year. I guess it's almost, I guess July is like the beginning of the second half of the year. So this is like right on time. And I just want to talk a little bit about the books that I've been reading this year and, you know, give you some recs, talk about some ones that I haven't loved so much, and just answer some of these questions because they're fun. And I did this tag last year, I believe, and I don't know if I did it the year before. It's just a fun tag to do. I love watching other people's, and a lot of people's are coming out about this time. So I thought I should do it myself, give the people what they want. I know that the people don't care. But I will list the questions in the description if you want to do this video yourself, or if you want to just write your answers in the description. I would love to hear them. I love to hear everybody's book recommendations and what they've been reading. So definitely feel free to just answer some of these questions in the comments if you'd like. But that's pretty much it. So without further ado, let's jump into it. Let me first off start by saying how many books I've read so far this year, which I'm kind of hesitant to do because I'm a little embarrassed. I haven't been reading this year as much as I did last year. I read so much last year, and this year I've just been a little more busy, and so I just haven't had as much time to read. But I'm trying to rectify that, and I am trying to read more. I'm currently working on a video that requires me to read a lot, so that's a good way that I'm hoping I can catch up. I've read 19 books so far this year. Seeing as how I read almost 70 last year, I'm just a little behind, but you know what? I've been trying to reassure myself that reading is supposed to be a fun hobby, not something that I guilt myself about. So 19 is great. 19 is more than most people I know. So the first question is the best book that you've read so far this year. So I was scrolling through my Goodreads, looking at everything that I've read, and I was like, okay, I'm sure I'll just pick one of the 5-star reads that I've read this year, and I think I literally only have like 2 or 3 5 stars. I've been very stingy with my 5 stars, which is I think how it should be, because I just like want 5-star books to be books that I'm obsessed with. And the one that really popped out to me as one that I just loved was One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read this book in I think 24 hours because I was so obsessed with it. It's about this girl, and they actually just had a movie come out, which I need to see. It like didn't come to theaters, and I'm not even sure how you watch it. But it's about this girl named Emma, and she marries her high school sweetheart, Jesse, and they are just like completely in love, and they have this wonderful relationship. But on their first wedding anniversary, he goes off in a helicopter for a work assignment, and it goes down, and he's pronounced dead. So she's obviously dealing with the grief of that. And years later, she eventually moves on and meets this new man. Actually, he's not a new man. It's her old friend named Sam, also from high school. And they start up a romance. Oh, I forgot to mention, the helicopter that her husband goes on is missing, but it's never found. His body's never found. So what do we think happens? He comes back. So none of this is a spoiler. This is all like written on the back of the book. She loves her husband, but she's also fallen in love with this new man. She's also like a completely different person than she was when she was married to her husband. So it's just an insane story, and I was so riveted and emotionally like wrecked the whole time because I had no idea what she was gonna do. You feel so bad for her. You feel bad for every single one of the characters. It's crazy. But it was so good. I read it in 24 hours. So I think that definitely pops out to me as like my favorite book of the year so far. I've been reading a lot of her books this year. I also read Malibu Rising and Daisy Jones and the Six, and I read Evelyn Hugo last year, so I've really kind of been making my way through her books, and I give all of her books so far at least 4 stars because she is such a great writer. Like, homegirl knows how to write a story, and I'm a big fan of her. The next question is the best sequel that you've read so far this year. I think the one that's going to take this category is Before Your Memory Fades by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. So this is the 3rd book in the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series, which I'm a big fan of. I've got them all right here. I guess I can pull it out and show it. This is a book video. I could pull the book out. Before Your Memory Fades. So this book is similar to the other two books in that each book has 4 different stories in it, and they take place in this time-traveling cafe, which allows you to go back in time, but there's a lot of rules about what you can and can't do when you're back in time. But the biggest one is that you can only stay in the past for as long as it takes before your coffee gets cold. So it's about like, you know, 10 or 15 minutes. Each story centers on a different person and who they want to go back in time to see and what they need to say in order to kind of move on and feel happiness with the rest of their lives. And this series is so good. I love the whole series. Honestly, I don't think that like one is better than the other. All the stories are pretty like emotional. I think they all probably made me cry, and I just really love those books. They're so simple, such simple storytelling, but such a really cool concept like for a book. I'm always amazed by people who can come up with these like amazing concepts for books and execute them so well, and it's a wonderful series. Would definitely recommend. The next question is, what's a new release you haven't read yet but want to? Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. Bardugo? That's her name now. Leigh Bardugo. This is the second book to the Ninth House book, which I really enjoyed. I really liked Ninth House, and I just don't know why I haven't read this yet. I suck. That's the answer. The next question is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Let me look. I need to do a little bit of Googling. I feel like a lot of books that I was looking forward to came out at the beginning of this year, like Hellbent or Chain of Thorns. Okay, honestly, I can't find anything, and I think that's because I just have too many books here on my shelves that I know I need to read, slash books that have come out in the past few years that I like really want to read and haven't read yet, that I'm not really looking forward into what is coming out with much anticipation. I don't think there's any authors that I love who have any releases coming out soon, so I'm kind of, I don't think I have one. Number 5 is biggest disappointment. I think my biggest disappointment is definitely The Stolen Heir by Holly Black. This is like a companion series to the Cruel Prince series, and I loved the Cruel Prince series. I've talked about it on my channel so much. This series takes place in the same world. It follows Oak, who was like a 12-year-old in the last series, and now he's like 18. And it just was not as good as the first series. There was nothing fresh about it. There was honestly parts of the plot from the first series that she like reused, which I thought was so dumb. I'm like, come up with something new. I didn't hate it. I think I gave it like 3 stars. Like, it was a fine book, but it just wasn't as amazing as the first series was, which was kind of disappointing. And I think I'm not alone in that. I think a lot of people were kind of disappointed by it. The next question is, what was your biggest surprise read of this year? For this, I think I'm going to give it to It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. It's kind of a surprise and kind of not a surprise. I actually really liked It Ends With Us, even though I'm not a big fan of Colleen Hoover's other books that I've read. But because I'm not a fan of her other books, I think I like assumed this one might be bad. And I think a lot of people kind of assumed that it might be bad. There's so many opinions about Colleen Hoover, but I really just didn't like 2 of her books that I've read, and I kind of thought It Ends With Us was like a fluke. So I was actually surprised that I liked It Starts With Us. I appreciated how it was kind of just a nice love story. There was still some conflict, but it wasn't like ridiculous conflict. It was like realistic conflict with what Lily would be dealing with. But I just really enjoyed Lily and Atlas's relationship and like learning more about that, as well as the new character, Atlas's brother. And I just really liked it. Like, I thought overall it was really simple and like heartwarming and a fun story. But what we're not going to do is talk about the It Ends With Us pictures that have been leaking of Blake Lively and the other actors, and why does Blake Lively look like that? The next question is favorite new author, which I actually kind of mentioned earlier, but I'm definitely going to say I think Taylor Jenkins Reid is one of my new favorite authors. Like, all of her books I've read so far are great. She really knows how to write a good story, how to like emotionally move you and make characters that are so complex and believable, and write about these complicated relationships. And I'm a big fan of her. I think I've given all of her books that I've read besides One True Love's 4 stars, and then One True Love's was 5 stars. So I'm definitely a Taylor Jenkins Reid stan, and I need to read her other stuff. I need to read Carrie Soto Is Back and experience more Taylor, because she's great. Newest fictional crush. Oh my gosh, crush! So I just read this book called A Lady's Guide to Fortune Hunting by Sophie Irwin, and it was really good. It takes place during the Regency era, or I think the Regency era, but it's about this girl named Kitty who her parents both die. She's got 4 sisters, and she basically needs to find a rich husband in order to provide for her sisters, or else they're going to be penniless. And she basically decides to go into London society and try and like get a rich husband, and it's like such a slay. So she's a great character in general. So she tries to kind of seduce this one boy, but his older brother is named Lord Radcliffe, and he sees what Kitty is up to, and Kitty kind of like blackmails him into helping her, and they have this like enemies relationship, but it eventually turns into a enemies to lovers. And he basically just reminds me of Mr. Darcy, which is why I think he's my new fictional crush. Plus I've, you know, got a thing for this era. It's a really fun book. I would definitely recommend it if you are a fan of Jane Austen and just want to read something that's like in the same vein. The next question is newest favorite character. I just talked about Kitty from that book. She was a really fun character, and I thought she was like girl boss. I read Malibu Rising this year, which is a great book, and I really liked Nina. I just really respected her and everything that she did and put up with in order to care for her siblings. I really loved this book. This book centers around a family of four siblings who are famous because their father is famous, but their father is not in their lives, and they grow up in Malibu, and every year they have this big party in Malibu. It's this crazy party that a bunch of famous people come to, and it's just kind of like this insane rager. As you're leading up to this party, you're learning about these kids' childhoods and about their mother and about their relationship with each other, and then a lot of drama kind of comes to a head at this party. And it's a really great book about sibling relationships. Like, I loved it, and I thought Nina was an awesome character because of the way that she cares for her family and was so selfless and was just a queen. So slay, Nina. Number 10 was a book that made you cry. Probably all the books. I think Malibu Rising probably had me shed a tear or two. I think One True Loves definitely had me shedding a tear or two. And then Before Your Memory Fades. Those are kind of 3. I know I've already talked about all 3 of those. It's kind of the only one that I'm looking at that I like remember crying, even though like I tear up when I'm reading like all the time. 11 is a book that made you happy. Honestly, none of these books made me like happy, which sounds bad, but I think a lot of the books I read are like kind of emotional, and so I have like conflicted feelings because I might be enjoying the book, but it's not necessarily like an upbeat book. But I will say I just read this book called My Oxford Year by Julia Whelan, and it's about this girl who goes to Oxford for a year to study. She's getting a master's in literature, and if you watch my channel, you know that I went to Oxford like 2 years ago now in the summer of 2021, and I studied abroad there, and so I loved reading this book because it would talk about things that I remembered and had similar experiences with, and so I think that book made me happy, but also like reminiscent of my time in Oxford. Kind of interesting because that book is also very sad at the end. There's kind of this plot twist in the middle of the book where you think it's like this normal like romance, but then this really emotional thing kind of hits you and you're like, oh, this is kind of deep. The first half of that book made me very happy. 12 is the most beautiful book you've bought this year or received. Honestly, this is like the top one right here, but this one kind of takes the cake for me. It's called Yoke by Mary H.K. Choi. I think it's so pretty and so cool because it's about sisters. So there's one sister on the front, one sister on the back, and then on the pages here, they're holding hands. And I think that's so unique. It pops, it's so cool, and I got it signed by Mary because I actually walked into a bookstore and she was there. Kind of doing this like table thing where she was sitting and you could walk up and talk to her, and I talked to her and she was so nice. Another one is also Chain of Thorns. I thought it was an okay book. I thought it was good. Kind of a classic Cassandra Clare. Wasn't really wowed by it, but like you have to admit that's a beautiful cover. And all of the covers of this series are so pretty. This is another one that I have got and haven't yet read. It's called The Picture Bride by Lee Gum-yi. That's also really beautiful. Like, come on. And then the last question is kind of a daunting question and makes me a little nervous, but it is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And I'm like, so many books. I need to read so many books by the end of the year. I will say I made a whole video last year called Books I'm Embarrassed I Haven't Read Yet because they've been sitting on my shelf for so long. And in that video, I was like, oh, like, I'm going to read these books. Like, these books are a priority. That was probably a year ago, and I don't think I've read any of them. So one is Yoke. I know I just got this one. It hasn't been sitting on my shelf for that long, but I really want to read this one by the end of the year. Another, which I've already talked about, Hellbent. I have the Atlas 6 duology, and haven't read either of those yet, but I really want to read them. I read Alone with You in the Ether by Olive E. Blake, and I really liked it, so I think I'll enjoy these. I just need to pull the trigger and do it. Oh, one I definitely need to do is Emma by Jane Austen. It's right here. I just don't want to deal with taking it out of the stack. I've read all of her novels besides Emma, and I think the reason that I don't want to read it is because it's the last one, and I'm kind of hesitant to do it because once I read it, there'll be no more Jane Austen for me to read again for the first time. I know she has some other stuff, like she has some short stories that I haven't read yet and other things. Of her 6 novels, there's only one I haven't read yet, so I'm just kind of like, I don't want to read it because then it's over and there's only rereading. Plus, I already know the story of Emma. Like, I've seen the movies, and so it won't be a big surprise to me, so I should just do it because I should just do it. That is the tag. I hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely leave some of your answers in the comments. I want to know what you guys have been reading, and leave me any recommendations. I probably don't need any more recommendations actually because I have so many books I haven't read yet. I have a lot to catch up on, but I do love to hear it, so let me know. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more videos from me in the future. That could be fun, that could be cool, we could be friends. Just think about it. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Slay!